Hello and welcome to the second part of the How to Draw series. If you're only just joining us and missed the first part on 5 common misconceptions that might keep you from picking up art as a skill, I will link the video as a card at the end. The subject of this video, however, is going to be materials. I would like to start off by letting you know that to get started you really don't need any fancy materials or the whole range that I will show you here. This is more for you to know what's out there, how to pick things that go together and what might interest you. What you will really need is the patience to get to know the medium you choose. And I will link a few names down below to show you that some paper and a ballpoint pen or pencil are enough to create some pretty amazing artworks if you know what you're doing. That said, some of the items that I will show you today are branded. However, I haven't been paid to show them to you. It's just fitting materials I still have with me, and it is up to you to decide if you want to buy them or not. Let's get started, shall we? I distinguish between 3 types of materials. Paper. Paper is what holds the pigments. Tools. Your tools are the likes of pencils, pens, chalks and markers, anything that can contain a pigment and leaves a mark on your piece of paper. Your tool determines the medium you will be working with. And finally, your assistive tools are not always needed depending on the medium. These could be erasers, sharpeners, masking fluids and tapes and so on. So why should we look at paper? The paper we use is fundamental in supporting the tool, medium and style we want to express. Choosing the right paper can make creating a piece much easier. As you can see here, some paper blocks tell you on the outside which techniques they are best suited for, but these tend to be a general guide. I myself have bent those rules a few times with some interesting results. There are 3 aspects to look out for: texture, thickness, and color. Texture is what keeps the pigment on the page, and it ranges from very smooth, like in transfer paper, something somewhere in between, like printer paper, to very rough, as in watercolour paper. Think of it as a landscape with hills and valleys. The rougher the paper is, the more pronounced those valleys are. If you go over them with a tool, pigment gets deposited in those hills and valleys. If they are deeper, you can add more layers before they fill up or get depressed too much to add more. Under some circumstances, for example when drawing clouds or mountains, it can actually be of benefit to go for highly textured paper and leave the texture showing. Going into an art store, you will find that paper usually comes in different thicknesses. The thickness of the paper comes into play if you decide between a wet or a dry medium, as you need thicker paper to draw with the likes of ink. Otherwise the paper could rib or bleed through to the other side. This is where it gets a little confusing. If you look here, different thicknesses are generally expressed by the weight of the paper, and there is 2 different systems. The metric system with GSM or grams per square meter, and the imperial system in lbs or pounds, which is measured against 2 possible sizes. This is where, especially as a beginner, the little indicators can be very helpful in choosing the right paper for your medium. And from there, it's just a case of trying until you find something that works for you. From my personal experience, however, most medium textured paper above 200 grams per square meter that feels about as thick as 3 printer pages together can support a range of different media, wet or dry. The third and equally important aspect is paper color. The most common colors, especially in sketchbooks, which are suitable for a lot of different types of tools and media, are white and cream. White and cream paper is the black in fashion, it goes with anything. However, in more recent years I've also seen brown, black and different colour cardstock being used for some very interesting effects. The difficulty there being that sometimes the tool would need to be adjusted accordingly. You can't use black ink on black paper. Sounds like common sense, but you'd be surprised by how many posts you can find about artists getting excited to try a new paper, only to realize they forgot to also buy a different color ink, or that their colored pencil changes how it looks on the new paper and they have to rethink their color palette. Now, we have talked a lot about paper, but not about the tools that will actually determine the medium you can use. I will focus the How to Draw series on pencils and ink pens. However, I would like you to see what is available to you, so let's get started with the dry media and tools. There's graphite pencils. They commonly come in different grades, as you can see here, from H9, which is the hardest and colors the lightest, to B9, which is the softest and colors the darkest. Mechanical pencils have a thin lead that you can refill as needed, but usually only range from 4H to 4B, but you don't have to worry about sharpening them. I would put colored pencils into the same category as graphite pencils, as they work much the same, only that you get the aspect of color and mixing color on top of it. There's many different types, waxy, creamy. You will have to try them to see which one you like best. My two favorites, Faber-Castell Polychromos and WHS Spectrum Sings Alternative, works almost interchangeably and show that you don't always have to go for the most expensive products to get a great result, but you don't find those unless you try around. Next we have charcoal and Conte crayons. They come in different shapes and grades. I have a round hard version of those, for a mechanical pencil that holds them. They are amazing for underdrawings or quick studies on large paper, but they can be messy and are hard to erase. I did a lot of my earlier life drawings in charcoal and sanguine, as they forced me to be decisive. And last but not least, we have pastels, which are chalky, and oil pastels, which are creamy. They can be quite messy too, but the brilliance in color and ease of working with them when you know what you're doing can really be worth it. A wet drawing medium usually refers to ink, but includes any substance that can be put into a solution and applied to the paper. This means that a wet medium can often be used to draw as well as paint, increasing its versatility. Examples include your bog standard ballpoint pen. Yes, you can create incredible art with this too, as we already covered in the beginning of this video. Ink pens, which come either in the form of calligraphy pen, felt or brush nib pens. Then there's gel pens and markers, which come in water and alcohol-based varieties, as well as everyday stains like tea or coffee. Remember, any substance that can be put into a solution and be applied to paper qualifies. Now that you got to know some of the media and tools that are available to you, you might want to think about any assistive tools you might want to add to this mix. You don't necessarily need them, but they will make your life much easier. References are a good start with any medium. No matter how good your memory is, a reference can help adding those little believable details. A math set with a compass, ruler and a protractor have proven invaluable in the beginning to get those straight lines, perfect circles and correct angles until I had the practice down. A piece of cloth is also always nearby to keep the work area clean. Now, if you're working with pencils or colored pencils, you will also want a sharpener to keep a pointy tip. Very important are erasers as well, not just for removing mistakes, but adding highlights too. While a regular gum eraser will do for graphite or colored pencils, a kneaded eraser is much better for charcoal, Conte and pastels, as you have much more control without just pushing the color around on the paper. A Q-tip or blending stump can keep your fingers clean when smoothing out different values or colors, and a fixative spray can be used to seal layers you are happy with, either if you want to add other layers on top or if you want to seal your finished picture. Don't use hairspray. A lot of internet sources say it's okay to use, but in the long term it causes yellowing of the pictures, and if you have multiple layers, some of the top layers may come off. I learned that lesson the hard way, so do as I say, not as I do. The oil pastels are a bit special in such as they need some of the assistive tools you would expect the wet media would need. Definitely have a cloth nearby. As they are oil-based, if you want to blend or erase them, you will need a solvent to help with that. So this is definitely a medium to work with in a well-ventilated area only, and to keep any edges neat, I would also recommend masking tape. In fact, masking tape and masking fluid can be used to great effect with wet media to exclude an area from coloring before adding the pigment, then after drawing and drying, removing the barrier and revealing what was covered. And seeing as wet media can be used for both drawing and painting, keep some brushes handy, because who knows when you will need them to spread some of that ink in some water to cover a large area, or if you decide you want to use some of that coffee of yours for some line work. I know this was a lot of information, so I will compile all of this into some neat tables for you to look at as well, depending on what medium you would like to choose. Feel free to screen it to keep it for your own references. If you have any questions or comments, I would love to read them down below. And if you like, subscribe and hit that notification bell, you will get a notification on the 13th of March when we continue with part 3, mark making, and look at how to use pencils and ink pens effectively. Also, if you missed the first part of the series on 5 common misconceptions that might keep you from picking up art as a skill, I will link the video as a card at the very end. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you on the 13th of March. Bye!